Hello, Black pupils. My name is Anthony Wall. I recorded leading up to the World Trade Center attack. In that context and since, roles with including the World Trade Center being and having been used remotely, not just criminally foreign influenced. And this is at countries A through Z, Black pupils. It is time. For example, there's a YouTube channel called Judging Freedom with Judge Napolitano. He's got 500,000 subscribers. And I can't get him to hear me. And I'm breaching nothing new and showed already our intelligence communities, the difference between their roles with that. Which is also, for example, in other words, that they have the high lie progressions, which actually recorded. Originally and still, there are people with Sandy Hook campuses, including a prison there, involved with FBI and the differences of police forms, state police families, interstates, overt criminal enterprises, names next to body dumping spots, proven child abusers, leaders of the kids, first forced, and roles with them, and roles with use/S of that, with other natures of organized crimes at the same time. And more child abusers, leaders of the kids, only capable of being. Two, also further roles with uses of counters to such, used instead to force it, and with their own kids involved. There are retired police chiefs increasingly involved with medical offenders and the family members of judges on my street, tied to the family members who have a whole bunch of people in their own who made it look, who came and sought me out by themselves. And then pretend, and I don't even know them, and pretend they knew me. Trying to make fake exceptions, putting fake things in databases roles, all sides in criminal and civil cases roles, and in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center in the World Trade Center context. And since to hide it, also with Connecticut's Channel 3 News. Connecticut's Channel 3 News, and with names next to them too, the differences of their guilt with that. With the Saudi attackers too. There was another, because these are our side's roles for Saudis too. There's possession of the Americans' names, uses, and Saudi Arabia's. It's also with the uses of the religious names in the books, and of reason at the same time. Both the Old Testament and the Quran come with parts. They say that the Old Testament is the only part to defend. So it's not even debatable. And the beginning of the Quran has a part that says all that matters is honesty regarding use of the scientific value of the name of all space/existence. I'm translating from an English translation because the books are read out of sequence, self-valued roles with that. Use of knowledge of good and evil, pretend things are debatable or worth what they are not, where worth is relative to what is true always or not, to be led by that which is hyper-native pure. Vaccines. See, Native Americans have been stepped away from their voice to be able to defend properly. Unabridged Constitution and how and why we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them, let alone being Native American and the ground having been designed for a torture, extortion, slavery method, tactically denatured, and with a type of additional parts like the water, tactically denatured. Even the entire sea is tactically denatured. They want us to have the debates about this. As the Native American uses that difference not. The hyper-native system is abridged as the value of the Constitution, as the value of the Republic, which was revealed being, while humanity was still being led by the hyper-invisible but still discernible, and checking to make sure that their positives are not being used as or valued as criminal and citizens' natures of positives, because that blocks how nature communicates with positives and about how to make evolution's fruits gifts. It means out of nowhere. Vaccines. It's just things. If we could just, as simple as that, where there are people stacked upon with concrete, at least the ones who don't want to be. a president could write an executive order, for example, but we have to be on the same page. But to that could and give people that have a lot of land, but they wouldn't do things because the way the laws are now. But there's executive order that they're going to do things, and they're not going to get in trouble and things like that. Even we don't before. I mean, you could just we can find the space. Space means come out of nowhere for a fact, cheap nature. There are people who want to help, but all that help, as long as it comes to these systems, filtered, tactically ulterior from the hyper simultaneous one, that body, which is not our species body, it is not the other species bodies, but it is anyway. As one of the ways it shows us, it is the same body of hyper invisible but still discernible conjunction /s to all the parts of speech, not just with English, but all the parts of speech of English as the invisible but still discernible. See, we have what is not debatable, pretended debatable. They have an intercultural, the cultures of the interbranch, used as a shell game. The nature of debate contains quality aspects in nature that demonstrate collusion /s with a breaching method's use of all location /s and of all differences there. Increasingly, Connecticut has a corrections offices at and how it's at the edge of Wethersfield and Hartford, self-described as Wethersfield as a suburban, and Hartford as urban / suburban. And these are where these are towns that George Washington came right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, using James Madison's plan, and that behind the and him and the founders behind him and his plan that George Washington agreed to use and to help. He had to come to Hartford, Connecticut, and Wethersfield, Connecticut. Short ride from Hartford, short horse ride from Wethersfield. And they had to counter-extort, but they had to leave slavery, for example. We're not just going to attend to the laws against black dishonestly the way they do. And part of the way they get away with it is leaving the laws that were out against everyone at the same time. I learned in notes, for example, which is distinct from learning in a book, that they were internationally monitored conversations, and there were really crazy punishments as slavery shows were existing at the time against anyone though who was found out to have been speaking about building infrastructure outside of the suburban homes, the way they were forced designed before America's founders were born. See, there were collusions, self-valued, that no one has self-valued roles with it. But at least you're alive and you have a home, so you self-evaluate, and you're not realizing /s of that in the nature of debate, where there was and it is a complete possession / hyper-possession over it. Otherwise, this truth would have risen. We can't walk around with our books. I read something in my book my teacher didn't know. James Madison and our founders behind him, they agreed to, they wanted to be communicated as James Madison. This is before he was a president. See, people can't defend how they accepted American history and what nature is showing us itself at the same time, and what our founders showed us. And the breaching method measured and maintained. And, it showed that once it was declassified, has to, the significance of it, the value of it, that and how our founders didn't have free speech because everyone's words were measured and maintained by a breaching method, collusions against ourselves as the human species volume science. Otherwise, that body was sensed. This is why and how Native Americans had to fight with Native Americans when they didn't want to fight with each other, but syntactically. And then that continued until it was physically. This is more probable and practical than what is convicted. But rather than going after names who making convictions by and with theories and just straight up convictions, in other words, with the American history, what they're calling principles, to discern the principles correctly, we have to be led by that identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. Again, that which is not our species body, it is not the other species body, but it is you using that. So we can discern its distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible conjunction to all that is invisible but still discernible. Conjunction to, from, as, with, and for the value of what is physics, what is physical. Nature and the sciences show us that the identity of anything, real or made up, it is simultaneously greater than and more finite than it, and it is with active relativity to it. In ways, some ways in our to an extent of our control. No, but we have control. You don't know we have control. We're supposed to have free speech. If we could use having black people's whites of eye simultaneously, by its identity showing us, projecting the identity of all space/existence, is projecting to us. We have eyes just like other species bodies, distinctly but non-distinctly and simultaneously, but also per that again, further / hyper simultaneously. And I'm putting the slash because there are distinct parts of its hyper invisible but still discernible body when we pay attention to its value. And the breaching method's value. Because the breaching method simultaneously employed not just other communicated for black pupils, whites of eyes, that nature increasingly is demonstrating, is positive communications by itself, as itself, to discern. Comes with revelations. Is not just having the same color eyes at the same time. Is having us teach, is having its identity show us what difference and similarity are about simultaneously / hyper simultaneously. And what that's about is its body of volume. The body of Christ is also cipher partially to decipher, because every single person's words, their style, logic, their fact treatment nature, the premises treatments were collusions with you / s. But still, they have a grown black woman, educated, speaking on YouTube, and they're wanting and needing to have natures of debate if someone's a doctor or not. As collusions, for example, changing and faking. I don't want to even put a link to it. Grown woman still blaming, because it's not her fault. Mostly it's the fault of the doctors of the sciences. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought. Roles with tactically juxtaposed, totally distinct natures of methods of organized crime, but not the way you guys have them conceived in your mind. The people putting these are collusions at all ages and natures of campuses after having been sustained, as we could discern, like not just against Native Americans, against Native Americans first. And he goes sickly distinctly against Native Americans, sickly distinctly against colonists, and how sickly non-distinctly is too recorded, but everyone is also recorded blaming other things other themselves. Part of the way to discern this is by discerning where and how both our founders and nature itself show us that a human fact treatment nature breaching method is one of the things that is true always, that those laws were about, that were entrenched in America before America's founders were born, let alone those that hurt Native Americans in ways that we know that they were tactical in our tactical ulterior from the species body of individual bodies and grouped differences generated by its difference, that which generated all matter, most probably. In other words, not just, especially with theory, especially with convictions. Any, the difference of that. It's not by accident they have pretend there's that relativity is a theory. There is categorical use. There are categorical uses too, multi-front of the names of identities of experts, the names of locations, differences, use /S roles, like the environment. Everything has been taken other than nature's course. Nature is a word that we must use for hyper additionally. Nature showing us to appreciate it as a word hyper additional for identity. And as every identity of your body, the parts of your body has a semi-nature relationship to your complete identity. Your complete identity has a semi-nature relationship to this which generated all things. That we could discern the body of to an extent. And wherever we can discern to an extent that which is true always. And being used as truth its way. It comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself. And the only increasing value of that. And this brings means where we are fact, human nature. This brings means where we are difference, A through Z. This brings means where we are difference, A through Z, having been through systems tactical ulterior. We can make this into hyperpositives instantly. If what we make out of it turns negative, we could sense and then do it. Because as long as we're doing it for that nature of thing and that nature of industry we're going to bring about, because we can't leave out too. While there's these problems and where they have diplomacy or war, it still rolls with that torture, extortion, slavery method. Forcing too, other things, others ourselves. Blame for what nature in itself. Nature shows us that's one of the things true always. Human fact, human nature breaching method is one thing true always about those crazy laws that were entrenched and sustained for the torture, extortion, and slavery of our founders and behind James Madison's plan. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to use that plan. And then they forced and gave people the means to fight for an extent of freedom. They had to leave slavery entrenched northern and south because it wasn't just against that difference. And it wasn't, in other words, it was roles. Or that body was sensed. In other words, boxing. I teach us things, but the nature of debate contains people pretending the value of what is published or not. Offensively pretending that means what it does not. And with physical delusions, nature delusions. Nature is a word we need hyper additional for identity because we only have an extent of the identity of all space/existence that we could examine as the hyper invisible but still discernible. It is what we are appreciating, where and how we are appreciating, why and how we need more than one name for a verb. We need the predicate act discerned, or discernible, which is the main verb. We need the participle natures, which are not just about time, the present participle and the past participle, as the identity of verb, and or as means too, to discern the identity of the verb, because every identity has its complete identity, only discernible with that, and when used to simultaneously discern that which is greater than and more finite than, and group relativity to all things, the way it is. No, every identity. As you know, your identity now, it's an identity that has part of itself that is not even here as the past, but you know it was. And that is even if it's changed in the books. See, the books have been changed since the beginning. That's why we have to have a new act. A new act. I'm not even a lawyer. We need a who disbelieves act. There is and has been roles switching names into branch. Also, relative to on a mass scale, all kinds of natures of organized crime with factuality, relative to how the speech method keeps the differences between campuses A through Z needed used through our own with our factual nature styles. Factual nature, quiet aspects of nature, and names uses. See, there are names used /S. Like people speak about the integrity of the FBI being used by the breaching method too. They already use them remotely to measure and maintain that they can't defend themselves and looks on things, their worldview, and us at the same time. In other words, and this is the same at countries A through Z. The suits and ties, the counters and exception are an array, being and having been used by this human fact should be nature breaching method. That was a part of the subject of the communications of our founders. Declassified, but known, but we have it replaced as value relativity and relativity / relativities to what they said. They communicated for us not to leave out how the breaching method measured and maintained everyone collusion with itself against selves, and for them also as collusions. And the difference of that too, roles use as otherwise that body was sensed, including if that body was the majority of people, including if it was everybody. That's the only reason why the Civil War, the Revolutionary War ended. They didn't have North and South free from slavery. They had sickly distinctly, and still sickly non-distinctly, and it was against everyone. But also concentrated in the laws, that part. It was and is measured and maintained, left out now because there's still collusion at allocation /S and with U /S of the differences that with that, like campuses. Campuses are being used as only their differences are being used, and the differences of the names in them, their ages. These are tools being used for predicate acts. They're putting fake things in databases, and these are being stacked upon. This breaching method propagated to an identity of theater, that pseudo-integrity with the suits and ties, counters, and exceptions as collusion /S. Collusions. The North and South are still being used to interpret. They're still being measured and maintained, communicating other for our founders. They're a shell game. They even have people with that former FBI director Robert Luskin involved with KKK themed, black themed, Latino themed, putting fake wire transcripts, faked mail. They have roles with black and white female judges involved with some KKK black theme, like a Detective Samuda involved at Central Connecticut State University. Also with people with Wethersfield Pizza House and Wethersfield, right near state judicial branch offices. There are people with Sandy Hook campuses involved with medical corruption tied to Adam Lanza and to the campuses there, including a prison there, is involved with all kinds of delusions and criminal foreign influence crimes with crime scenes like a body dumping spots and a principal child abuser they had collusions with before they were caught. And they're torturing them to keep things hid. And they're shown needs to do that and means to do that by a breaching method that never released. Its method North and South. It measures the nature of debate, contains quality aspect, and natures as criminal insidiousness, criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence, in needing to pretend other to screen itself. This is why and how we have the KKK black-themed, Latino-themed wire crimes of Wethersfield Police. There are two police named Mendez, who are also with the Wethersfield Police, are at Fox News in Hartford, Connecticut, and next to them, roles also with people with the name domain, with the intelligence community, with their religion. They're involved with people with religious and sexual and medical corruption, with judges and prosecutors, and these Mendes police putting fake police transcripts, fake communications with police with kids and adult, and then as an adult too. In other words, these are also people time collusions with Saudis and per worse. In other words, these are sides that are maintained. These are not legitimate roles with experts on the religions too. There are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought, readings of statutes with their uses of differences rackets. They showed the courts they needed to hide collusion /s at the same time with names on all sides of criminal civil cases. And they show them their delusions, only capable of being because of their roles with the worst use /uses of also the differences between campuses A through Z, being and having been communicated other than James Madison and our founders communicated for themselves. And then as their roles with presidents and with countering that which was and is still left entrenched as slavery against the suburbs, let alone against the cities. That's why it's important to understand how the breaching method, more so than anyone else, is what is involved with the self-described urban / suburban, Hartford, Connecticut, and suburban across the country. From America to Russia to Ukraine, the suburbs look exactly alike, almost exactly alike, even though before America's founders were born, the slavery method, the torture, extortion method, north and south, distinctly, but it was north and south entrenched and having been sustained. And to appreciate it, if anyone was proper with their passions and their appreciation of American history, they would have observed, as nature only gives us means to observe. It was sustained against Native Americans. It is also more probable and practical to theorize, let alone to convict. They took down a mountain in America and in Northern Africa to force, trick, hurt, and persuade would unfold it as perfect possession over differences, defenses, as styles. Like, for example, grown men and women, doctors, because they're a doctor, in other words, they're speaking about white and black, leaving out the breaching methods roles with that and pretending it's debatable because they have a doctorate. Because they have a badge or a gavel. All sides of criminal and civil cases and the court's names and the intelligence tied to them and the news, they've been planted in the same sequence shifts, federal evidences, crimes, predicate acts roles, predicate acts methods roles. Per way worse. Forgiveness is also because people use short words right in defenses of themselves, and other people fake and change what they say. Because since you guys were kids, you had tactically delusions, raw, criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature, quality aspects, and natures associated with the people who have been speaking to you. Clearer than day, black pupils. I shouldn't have to beg. Get me off the fake conversations about the World Trade Center, WFSB. Whole bunch of people involved with the corner of Elm Street and Route 3 involved with you with those predicate acts that you want to take as a company if you don't get them on paper, like the ones who attach me personally, the ones who attach me to fake conversations with themselves. That's most important. It's also a hyper evidential because I'll show you guys. I won't sue you. You let me get them personally. Attach me to fake conversations with you and with others about the World Trade Center attack while I caught you forcing a principal child abuser and collusions with medical offenders of kids and legal ones at the same time with judges and prosecutors, kids and families involved with the same house /s involved with it. Same ones in police phones, rackets, fake conversations with, in other words, as the ones interstates involved with the World Trade Center and the court next to it too. and spots next to it in the World Trade Center attack context. The same ones with WFSB and Fox Connecticut News. A whole bunch of people tied to a Perone family too, with journalists and their roles with people with the name Kerr too, with journalists at the corner of and people I don't know, like a Dominic Abate is one of the ones involved with foreign and domestic countries all along Route 3, and with people with the name Zeno and with the name Brian Bowen and others. In other words, increasingly people tied to coaching, the difference between coaches or teachers as people that were telling lies to teachers of leaders of campuses I went to and making confessions relative. Central Connecticut State University said they have a Mike Pandolf, and they have others involved with their family members in Glastonbury intelligence, involved with them with predicate acts. And I mean, in other words, the people they confirmed and demonstrated this. The ones who communicated them involved with that, and also having roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases, in depositions. There's roles with Mike Pandolf, who was planting evidences with people all along Route 3 with other countries, McCord, people with the name McCord, and some girl that was in a suit against the McCords, and a legal suit, real or made up. In other words, in their deposition, why they called me there is because they're covering sequence shifts and their roles with predicate acts, including with that girl. And the side of that side of the Weathersfield High School. They've been planting evidences on each of the campuses I went to as their roles with intelligence families that lived near me in the past, and ones further involved, and a whole bunch of people tied to them from other areas who've been planting evidences on my street involved with violence, including with bug spray and more confessions and demonstrations of roles on off campuses, putting fake things and roles with uses of their differences, Latina, etc. There were fake motivations. Ray Colol said he has put it. I didn't help him at all. I watched him do it. He put salt in the garden of a reported Jewish neighbor of mine. Reported to me by an algebra class teacher I had, who was involved with Anthony Agnew, was in that class, who is increasingly involved with judges and prosecutors and people from other countries and criminal enterprises involved intercities planting evidence on my street. I never seen him on my street in my life, and on the sides of the campuses. Has something to do with their roles with corners of the street too. People at foreign and domestic recorded, confessed, demonstrated at the corner. In other words, please follow mandated law, people, and to have Judge Napolitano help. The North and South, there's a Joshua Julian that a Ray Cololo recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed years before. He was influenced to repeat his name to me. He's one of the ones involved with a Mark Violet. Sought me out from other areas. One of the ones that sought me out from other areas to make confessions and demonstrations, also with one named Kolvinskis. They have roles with UConn, with foreign and domestic military and intelligence, with all kinds of psychiatry crimes, drugs and medicine crimes, with identity theft frauds with their teachers too, putting fake things in databases with their family members, their neighbors, as victims and hyper victims. But if you treat it like that, people want to force the thing and just call you names, things like that. And these are the interbranch won't identify themselves legitimately. And they have some black-white female judges involved with the Detective Samuda and others involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, planting evidences and wire crime acts and methods, also sexually oriented with him, intercities. Heather Hansen is also one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people with the business office and people along Valley Crest, who also will confess, demonstrate they have collusions with federal evidences crimes along Walker Hill Road. In other words, identity theft fraud, someone with the names Finelli, and also as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack, for Saudi's Forest. My Saudi friend wasn't with me in New York City. I never had a conversation with Claudia Scalora verbally. She was right outside the door of my hotel late at night when I was walking in. There's increasingly people tied to her since I was a kid. Are involved having time to where I was going to be, and then pretending they knew me. And also, my Saudi friend tied to her, confessed, demonstrated, recorded, confirmed, has roles with a John DiMauro at the sides of, at Town Line Drive locations. I don't know what. I never saw John DiMauro there. Has something to do with the DiMauros and Scaloras and Cololos have roles also with wedding forensics, with predicate acts, also digital crimes, replacing and changing and faking what's digital. Also the differences between states' rights and federal rights, or federal obligations or states' obligations. The difference of that is also used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, wrought, black pupils. All right, thank you, people. Thank you for stopping by. I'm going to show you how we can free ourselves. We have to free how, if we pay attention, other things, others ourselves are communicated for our founders, and they have communicated for themselves. So they want to read Marbury versus Madison, leaving out reality, while tactically delusions wrought. Forgiveness is because there's a certain type of victim/hyper victim. So that's why we need a Who Disbelieves Act, because they've been using the locations to force the quality of fact, nature, collusions, all kinds of federal evidences, rackets, methods, and collusions there or at the crime scenes, having been. That's which manifests with the style, with their readings of statutes and precedents. They're still criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. How are they going to interpret Marbury versus Madison? Real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, black pupils. We must force them to see the whites of eyes. Fake branches at A through Z need to bow and fall. But there is seed. They need to step back from this crap. Let's all proceed. Please get Judge Napolitano to respond. And so we could end wars and all these things. And we could force the quality of fact, should be nature, that is capable of liberating people at A through Z, because the others haven't been forced. You guys have obligations before you use words like genocide to address the suits and ties, counters, and exceptions at collusions, which are recorded. A whole bunch of people tied to a former Dean Judd and his kid will record, express, demonstrate, confirmed, involved with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, per others, attaching everyone to fake ties, fake natures of ties to other people, hiding how all natures of investigators will use remotely, criminally foreign influence. Oh, it's debatable. They can't afford debate proper. Then they're showing that they need to self-value. Predicate acts already being and having been stacked, all natures of databases. Increasingly, people with the names Perone, and Kerr concentrated. They have roles with intelligence at the corner of Town Line Drive and Saulstein Highway, distinctly from the DiMauro family's intercities and the Cololo family, involved with judges and prosecutors with federal evidences, crimes, also with mayors and various police departments of Connecticut. A whole bunch of people associated with ones named Tim O'Brien, Andrew O'Brien, and Ray Cololo. And I don't even know his sister's name. And people associated with him all along Route 3 have roles also with their educators with predicate acts and further medical and sexual offenders of kids. How they're getting away with it. They're attaching everyone around them to fake conversations with themselves. You guys have subject treatments that are incapable of defending logic and reason as you were taught, and of affording to be, let alone to protract any voice that is capable of defending you, Americans. That's why we have to get WFSB on the record. Please don't disbelieve me. And get Judge Napolitano to get the Who Disbelieves Act, too. So we don't have to come beg him on social media because they're using wire and mail crime methods. They already put me to fake and changed digital evidence. I caught them cold as day with their own kids, interbranch and intelligence with child abusers, leaders of kids, and time use of names at next to body jumping spots years apart. And years apart, child abusers, leaders of kids first forced. There were time use / this and that recorded too. Like even on Facebook, they know other was recorded than it is. Oh, but our intrusive was here. It's not just like that. They changed what I typed down there too. They have words like extremism and radical. If you put it on paper, they have delusions too. And they have collusions with the World Trade Center attack and with the responses to it used to cover it up. We need to get them on paper and then to stop leaking. So Wethersfield police are involved with leaking with different their roles with people with the fire departments and with the Air Force, with the Marines, and with Navy. And they're self-valuing that they don't know what I'm talking about because they know to an extent that I'm talking about how they put me in fake conversations with themselves. So please get them on paper, one name and sequence narrative. They've been refusing to identify themselves legitimately since I was a kid. A whole bunch of court's family members have people from other areas that came on my street to steal my identity with them. Fred Grisable is one of the ones recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with this. Also with the ones on Elm Street involved with this. And Wethersfield too. Our very family has something to do with their roles, intercampuses, planting evidences. Why do you hide and plot? Why you play games, FBI? Why don't you just confess this to the president? In other words, we have to deal with the predicate acts with facts, and you guys are leaking too. And what's the name of the guy that was reportedly the roommate of Ray Colon? He's involved with the ones next to Fox Connecticut News, increasingly involved with identity theft frauds, putting kids from other classes putting fake things in databases. These are not for the motivations known. When you hear people with motivation, your motivations, in other words, all investigators are having been used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Increasingly, people with the name Cololo and DiMauro have roles with FBI and courts at and next to the state corrections offices, also with the Lance Cuddy, per one of the teachers who is pretending other with WTNH, planting fake news when they were forcing the principal child abuser and other medical and sexual offenders of kids and retired police chiefs involved with her with that. And their family members. They have something to do with the Mazzucato family with the police chief Cintron and other ones retired. And a whole bunch of people at that corner where they have a Mazzucato bakery now from years before it. And before the World Trade Center attack, as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack roles. Also, ones named DiMauro all along Route 3 have roles with federal evidences crimes and other natures of organized crime and abuses of elderly, veterans, and kids on and off campuses. And their roles with medical corruption at Harvard Hospital with the businesses next to it and the houses next to it through time. At the same time with overt criminal enterprises and people from all these cultures and countries involved with differences, rackets, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and these judges, including female judges, white and black, switching and forging names with the KKK, Confederate flag themed ones involved. And they bring all these names up and put me in fake conversations too. In those fake conversations, they pretend that I said everyone was evil. Get them on paper, Judge Napolitano. We shouldn't have to beg. Have them say sorry to you. Or with you, but I'm sure it's not that.